to further build on the concept of supply chain that we talked about, right? So here I want to focus about what are the different sub-functions within the supply chain. What is a SCORE framework that talks about, which stands for Supply Chain and Operations Reference Framework. As well as we will talk about the different supply chain roles typically that are there. What are their responsibilities and how they contribute in an overall supply chain. As well as we can understand about the overall business objectives of the individual functions, right? And how they are kind of interconnected. So we talked about the definition of a supply chain, right? So it's really around the different flows of the information, right? So there is a flow of information, there is a flow of a cash, there is a flow of a data, value and risk. But there are these multiple kind of entities who work together to deliver the products and services to the customer, right? So that's overall about the supply chain. But if you have to understand what it consists of, what are the different sub-functions? So the first important one is a plan. So the plan consists of the different sub-functions further, like demand planning, then there is a supply planning, then there is a sales and operations planning, or integrated business planning. Within a planning also, there could be a long range kind of a planning, right? So typically companies focus on the short term kind of a planning on a monthly basis. But for the strategic kind of planning, it could be a long range. So the long range meaning it is from 3 to 10 years. Sometimes it could be 3 to 15 years as well. So the budget planning is also under the plan itself, right? Because you are actually doing the budgeting for all the end-to-end supply chain in terms of the forecast, the capacity, etc. Correct. So the planning function is really important one, as it gives the visibility into the forecast, creates the supply response, right, and ensuring that the finished products are available to deliver to the customer. So the accuracy of a plan drives a lot of business impact. For example, if your forecast is right, or your supply plan is very reliable and accurate, the customer service will be better. So this will result into optimized working capital. What is optimized working capital? Meaning that your inventory levels are optimized. That is whatever is required to the customer, only that much of inventory has been maintained, correct? The planning function is more of a strategic and data driven as well. So a lot of data is used for these functions. So we'll talk about demand planning in subsequent kind of a slides. But this is very critical and the data driven kind of a function. Second one is a make, which is manufacturing, right? So manufacturing of the actual products. And this is really a core kind of a function, which is responsible for converting the raw material into finished good. Within that, there are further sub-functions also. So that is manufacturing, then there is a quality and engineering. So the quality, very critical kind of functions for across the industry. Be it, let's say it's a pharmaceutical, be it automotive, be it heavy equipment manufacturer, telecom, etc. Engineering function is also equally kind of critical to ensure that the manufacturing is continued. There are no kind of disruptions. Maintenance is also important one, right? To ensure that the production and manufacturing is continued, right? So with a right quality. So maintenance is very, very crucial kind of function. The third one is a source. So this function deals with the procurement of raw material. Raw material, that is, it could be direct material, it could be indirect material. So the direct material is the raw material that directly goes into the product. So for example, you are making, let's say the automobile, all the components of engine or tire is a direct material. However, the indirect material could be, let's say, you are using some paint, right? Or any consumables, for example, something like oil that is required for operating the machinery, right? Or the DG set within the manufacturing plant. So that becomes an indirect material, but you need to procure that in order to ensure the continuation of the business operations. The fourth one is a deliver. So this function deals with the logistics and movement of material from manufacturer to customer. or from suppliers to the manufacturer, right? So this is one of the critical kind of a function which has been recently in a lot of news, right? Because of all the external disruption that are happening. All we know about the semiconductor kind of shortages recently happened across the globe, correct? So that happened because of some geopolitical kind of issues. Sometimes there are natural disaster. So logistics is really, really the core of the supply chain and very critical kind of a function. Within that, there could be a distribution where you are dealing with movement of material from your distribution centers to actual the retail points, correct? Another could be a transportation. So the transportation is the function which deals with a relationship with the third party logistics for the fleet management, correct? Another could be a custom and taxation. For the global supply chain, there is import and export, which comes up with the customs, the taxations of a given country. The fifth one is a return. So once the product has been sent to the customer, there might be chances that product customer wants to return the product. Maybe because of any preferences by customer or because of some of the issues. So typically the customer service team deals with the management of the returns, but ensuring that this product has been returned properly to the manufacturer and the customer service has been maintained, be it through a replacement or addressing some of the quality issues, any customer complaints, etc. Correct? Now, from 1 to 5, these are the critical kind of a function as per the SCORE framework, which is supply chain operations and supply chain operation reference, which is industry standard, industry recognized kind of a standard. Beyond that, there are some additional functions also that are working with the supply chain core function to ensure that the supply chain operations is kind of a seamless, correct? And as well as it's impactful. As I said, the planning function, all these functions are very data driven and digitally kind of enabled. So how the companies can use the data and analytics to make the impactful kind of decisions to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of a supply chain operations. Another function within the supply chain that is gaining a popularity is about a risk management and sustainability. Risk management, this is really, really important because of all the disruption that have happened in the past. So here the idea is how you can sense what is the external disruption or internal disruption that is coming in, and how you are well prepared to tackle that particular disruption to ensure that your customers are not impacted, correct? Sustainability is very directly related to supply chain, be it, let's say, your distribution, transportation, procurement of the raw material, and the whole manufacturing. How you can use your green energy, right? How you can use your returnable kind of a packaging material or environment friendly kind of a packaging, or the overall kind of ecosystem to ensure that you are enabling the sustainable kind of operations, correct? So this is really a forward-looking element, even very important across all the industries, correct? So the last one is about one of the oldest kind of a function, right? So which is integrate part and very crucial part of a supply chain. In this complex world, your supply chain operations can't be operated without information technology, correct? So all the systems that are there to support the overall operations, the IT systems like enterprise resource planning, the planning platforms, the financial systems, the payment systems, warehouse management, transportation management system, which is TMS, and as well as there will be other multiple kind of systems, correct, that are required to ensure the operations of the supply chain. So the supply chain IT is also is very, very important one. So this particular wheel, if I think from 0 to 8, 8 comprehensively you can tell that this is my supply chain for my given organization, correct? But just to highlight, the SCORE framework talks about 0 to 5, 0, 6, 0, 7, and 0, 8. So these are the additional add-on kind of functions that we added. So quickly recap the way I was talking about what is the SCORE framework, right? So the SCORE framework talks about plan, make, source, deliver. and written, which defines the supply chain in this way. This is very industry recognized kind of a framework for managing and improving the supply chain operations. Who has developed it? It was developed by Supply Chain Council. It is now called as APEX currently, correct? Association for Supply Chain Management. How to use this particular score framework, right? So one is you can use the common kind of a language for the supply chain, right? That industry currently is using to define your overall supply chain operations, right? So if there is a common kind of a language that everybody is talking about, the operations and improvement becomes really effective. So as I said, this provides a common language and terminology within the supply chain and this particular framework. Okay. So now we talked about the different sub-functions, right? So we talked about the what is overall supply chain is. So here I want to talk about what are the different roles that you can, or the organization or the individuals can play within the supply chain individual sub-functions. We talked about plan, make, source, deliver, return, correct? Then there is analytics, there is a risk management and supply chain IT. So these are the different sample roles, or the typical, very typical or the prominent kind of roles that have been seen in a supply chain. Within the planning, the first one is a demand planner. So the role of a demand planner is to get the visibility into the future demand. So they collaborate cross-functionally, because demand planning function is very enterprise level, cross-function kind of a team, because there are multiple factors that comes into a picture when finalizing a demand. So demand planners works with the sales and marketing, which is commercial organization, with a supply planner, with market access team, in-market sales team. This is like a cross-functional team who aligns on one set of a number in terms of the forecast for a given market and for a given product. One product could be one SKU. So the demand planner role is again very a data-driven kind of a role, which looks into multiple data sources, like what is your historical sales, what is a statistical forecast, what is your commercial budget, to get the consensus on one set of the demand planning, or the one set of consensus demand plan number. The second one is about a supply or network planner. So this is again within a plan. So the role of this particular individual is to design and come up with a supply plan or the supply response. This is based on the demand plan that has been generated by the demand planner. Looking at your inventory levels, looking at the customer service that is required, come up with the supply plan, right? So the supply plan as in how much you need to produce and how much inventory you need to transfer from distribution centers to the customer, correct? So again, this is very a complex and the data-driven kind of a role, and the system heavy role, right? So the where you need to deal with multiple systems like planning platform, your ERP system, warehouse management system, customer service, etc. The third one is a systems analyst, right? So this is part of the core IT kind of a role, and as well as the techno and functional, right? So there is of course the element of the systems and IT, but there is element of the function also, the domain context of the supply chain. So this particular person is responsible for understanding particular domain, understanding the technical requirement, and ensuring that particular system is able to support the business function or the business objectives, correct? So one of the example could be, let's say your company has one of the supply planning platform, popularly, let's say the Kinaxis Rapid Response. So it is one of the supply chain planning platform. The typical supply chain system analyst role could be who is responsible for the implementation of the rapid response in a given organization. On an ongoing basis, his role is to enhance the system, and as well as to ensure that that particular platform is functioning for the users, correct? And it's a correctly configured. Likewise, there will be a lot of system analyst kind of a roles. The fourth one is about a data analyst, right? So as I said, within supply chain, we generate the lot of data, correct? So in the data about a forecast, about the sales, about the inventory, about the transportation, cost, quality, service levels, etc. So the role of a data analyst is to look into the data, correct, define the data models and generate the insights to take a good business decisions, correct? So business decisions about overall planning, about the inventory, etc. The fifth one is a data scientist. So role of the data scientist is so now in this world, right, the AI, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning, so these are very buzzwords these days, right? So the role of a data scientist is how to leverage the supply chain data and bring the value using AI and machine learning. So one of the example is how we can use historical sales data to come up with the time series machine learning models like the deep neural network or maybe other models like Prophet or any ensemble kind of a models who have much better accuracy in terms of the predicting the values of a forecast. So how we can use, let's say, the machine learning to self-heal the overall supply chain or to learn the supply chain. So that's really a role of a data scientist within supply chain. Logistics manager, so this is a traditional kind of a role where individual is responsible for ensuring that the materials are moved from one location to another location in right quality, cost, and quantity. The seventh one is a procurement manager. So this is also very traditional kind of a role where individual is responsible for maintaining a relationship with your suppliers of a commodity, ensuring that the right cost, quality, and the service of the given product and service that is being procured from a supplier, and as well as they are responsible for the supplier development, so ensuring that the supplier capabilities are kind of elevated so that they provide the matured kind of a product or the high quality product to the manufacturer. The eighth one is a process excellence manager. So as you can see that there are so many high level kind of a processes. Within that, there are different sub functions, the sub processes, and everything is kind of interconnected. In addition to these processes, there is a data that is flowing from one step to another step or the one system to another system. And then there is a cache also that is kind of flowing and the multiple people that are involved. So how do you kind of ensure that all the processes are very streamlined, lean and efficient? So that is the role of a process excellence manager. So there could be a multiple process excellence manager just focusing on one of the sub functions. So for example, there could be process excellence manager only for a demand planning. Similarly, there will be many more kind of rules as well. So lastly, I want to talk here about why supply chain is in focus recently, correct? So we have gone through the pandemic, correct? So because of pandemic, we have seen the shortages of your food supplies of the basic and essential day-to-day life kind of a products. In addition to that, there recently have been a lot of disruption, correct? So there was a geopolitical issue or the Russia and Ukraine war that was happening. This impacted kind of a supply chains, be it for a semiconductor, be it for oil and gas and so on, correct? And as well as there are some events like the blocking of one of the Suez Canal. That's why the key shipments couldn't pass from one location to another location. So that's why it created a lot of issues. So this is why all the organizations, and if you're not getting a raw material, you will not be able to produce, right? So we know that for any of the famous automobile, if you place an order, you have to wait for a year, sometimes 2 years. Why it is happening? Because there are shortages and the companies are not able to produce these particular vehicles on time to deliver to the customer. So this is like a huge loss for the company in terms of the revenue and as well as the customer loss also, correct? So every company is now thinking about how to invest into the supply chain to ensure that you have very resilient kind of supply chain. It means that disruption we can't control. So there will be natural calamities. There might be some geopolitical kind of issues. There might be fire in a supplier factory, which can't be really controlled. So what is the option? Then how you can become agile and the resilient. So there is a event or there is a external disruption that is happening, that is fine. But how as an organization or as my manufacturing supply chain operations, I can retain or regain my original level of operations, correct? So that's really about being a resilient and agile supply chain. So that's why the supply chains are in a news recently.